compounding effect, why tiny choices quietly shape your entire life. Do not despise these small beginnings. Those words from Zechariah 4:10 sound simple, but they're surprisingly difficult to believe. Your brain loves dramatic change. It wants overnight success, instant results, and obvious progress. But almost everything meaningful in your life grows in a completely different way. It grows quietly. That's the compounding effect. You probably don't notice it while it's happening. One workout doesn't transform your body. One chapter doesn't make you an expert. One kind conversation doesn't build a lifelong friendship. But something is happening beneath the surface. Your future is slowly taking shape. The strange part is that your brain isn't naturally wired to appreciate this. Psychologists call it present bias. Your mind tends to value immediate rewards far more than future ones. That's why scrolling for another hour feels easier than reading a few pages of a book. The reward is immediate, even if the long-term cost is hidden. But hidden doesn't mean harmless. Every day, your habits are casting votes for the person you're becoming. That's why the smallest choices often matter the most. Think about planting a seed. For weeks, it looks like nothing is happening. You water the soil, protect it, and wait. If you judge the process too early, you'd probably think it wasn't working. Then one day, a tiny sprout appears. The growth wasn't sudden. It was simply invisible until it reached the surface. Your life works much the same way. Modern neuroscience helps explain why. Every time you repeat a behavior, the connections between certain brain cells become a little stronger. Researchers have shown that repeated practice gradually reinforces these neural pathways, making the behavior feel more automatic over time. Your brain is constantly adapting to whatever you repeatedly do. It doesn't care whether the habit is good or bad. It simply learns from repetition. That's why tiny actions become surprisingly powerful. Consider Warren Buffett. Most people know him as one of the greatest investors in history. But his greatest advantage wasn't discovering magical stocks. It was patience. He understood that compound growth becomes extraordinary only after enough time has passed. Money compounds, knowledge compounds, trust compounds. So does character. The same principle appears throughout history. When James Clear popularized the idea that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement, millions recognized something they had already experienced. Tiny improvements rarely feel significant today, but after months or years, they create a completely different life. The opposite is also true. Tiny neglect compounds too. Skipping one workout doesn't matter. Neither does buying one unnecessary item, or staying up 1 hour too late. But repeated hundreds of times, those small choices quietly become your reality. This is why people are often surprised by outcomes that were actually years in the making. Success rarely arrives all at once. Neither does failure. Jesus taught this pattern using seeds. In the parable of the mustard seed, something incredibly small grows into something much larger than anyone expected. The lesson isn't only about faith, it's also about growth itself. Great things often begin so quietly that they're easy to overlook. The world celebrates big moments. God often works through small ones. That perspective changes everything. Instead of asking, how can your life change this month? A better question becomes, what small action could you repeat today? That question feels less exciting, but it's far more powerful. Behavioral scientists have discovered that lasting change usually comes from making behaviors easier, smaller, and more consistent rather than relying on bursts of motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Systems remain. That's comforting because you don't need to become a different person tomorrow. You simply need to become 1% better today. Athletes understand this. Olympic champions aren't created by one incredible workout. They're built through thousands of ordinary training sessions that nobody remembers. Scientists understand it too. Years of failed experiments often lead to one breakthrough that the world suddenly calls genius. Even relationships follow the same rule. Strong marriages aren't built by grand romantic gestures every weekend. They're built through daily kindness, listening carefully, apologizing sincerely, and choosing patience when it's easier to become frustrated. Tiny moments, repeated consistently. That's where love grows. Sometimes people become discouraged because they can't see progress. But invisible progress is still progress. Think about learning a language. During the first few weeks, it feels painfully slow. Then one day, you suddenly understand an entire conversation. The ability didn't appear overnight. It accumulated. Your brain had been quietly connecting thousands of small pieces together. The same thing happens when you develop courage. You don't suddenly wake up fearless. You practice speaking honestly. You face small discomforts. You keep promises to yourself. Over time, your identity begins to shift. Psychologists have found that your actions often shape your identity just as much as your identity shapes your actions. Each repeated behavior becomes evidence your brain uses to answer one simple question: who am I? Every small promise you keep tells your mind you're someone who follows through. Every page you read says you're someone who keeps learning. Every act of generosity says you're someone who cares. That's the hidden power of compounding. You're not just building habits, you're building yourself. And here's something hopeful. The compounding effect doesn't require perfection. Missing one day doesn't erase months of consistency. Life happens. People get sick. Schedules fall apart. The important thing isn't never falling off track. It's returning before one missed day becomes a missed month. Consistency always beats intensity. Even history reminds you of this. Cathedrals that stood for centuries weren't built in a weekend. Many took generations. The builders often knew they would never see the finished structure. Yet they kept laying one stone at a time. They trusted the process more than immediate results. Maybe that's one of the hardest lessons in life. To believe that today's invisible effort still matters, especially when nobody notices, especially when progress feels slow, especially when quitting seems reasonable. But every meaningful achievement you've ever admired was once hidden beneath the surface. Before confidence came uncertainty, before wisdom came curiosity, before mastery came repetition, before the harvest came countless ordinary days. So if your progress feels invisible today, don't assume it's absent. Keep reading, keep praying, keep learning, keep showing kindness, keep taking care of your body, keep doing the quiet work that no one applauds. Because one day, people may call your success sudden, but you'll know the truth. It was simply the result of thousands of small decisions that quietly compounded into a completely different life. And maybe that's the most encouraging thought of all. The life you're hoping for doesn't begin someday. It begins with the next small choice you make today.